Ghost of Tsushima was one of my favorite games of the PlayStation 4 generation, and there are tons of people who still think that it was one of the best Sony exclusives of the decade. Now, for years, there was rumors of a sequel that were floating around the internet, and then in September of 2024, Sony finally unveiled Ghost of Yotei, a standalone sequel that confirmed that the Ghost series would be an anthology series going forward. While there's very little that's officially confirmed about Ghost of Yotei, recently we got some pretty big news from both inside sources and updates to the Sony website themselves. And today we're going to go over all of those details. We're going to talk about when the release date's going to be, when is the big reveal, as it might be happening sooner than we think. We have a lot to cover, so check the video chapters for easy viewing. Also, don't forget to enter the PS5 giveaway. Those details are in the pinned comment, and let's get started. So in case you missed it somehow, some major news was dropped recently via PlayStation's official website. Now, it doesn't seem like we're getting a new trailer for the game anytime in like the immediate future, within the next like week or two. I mean, it's possible, but we do have a ton of new information about the game setting and structure. According to the updated webpage for Ghost of Yotei, we got some new details about the character Atsu, who is, quote, filled with fury and determination to hunt down those responsible for the death of her family. And it also seems like she'll be funding this mission by taking on various odd jobs around the open world, as according to the website, it also says she will be taking on every odd job and bounty, and that the player will also be able to determine how she fights, survives, and evolves the legend of the ghost. So from the sounds of it, this is going to be much more of a bounty hunter revenge story than the first game's fight for survival against the ongoing invasion. And it also seems like there will be much more player agency around the open world as you take on various side quests to fund your main mission of hunting down the game's antagonists. Now, it's also been confirmed that Ghost of Yotei will take place 329 years after Ghost of Tsushima, so don't expect to see any traditional cameos from previous fan favorite characters because they're long gone at this point. Now, I'm hoping that there's going to be like a legend mission for Jin Sakai. That would be awesome. But as I've talked about many times on this channel, I know that that is disappointing news for those of you hoping for a direct follow-up to Ghost of Tsushima, but that just isn't what this game is going to be. Granted, that will also make it really easy for new players to get into this one, since it will require absolutely zero knowledge of the first game's events to understand, which could just end up being the stepping stone that some people need to get into Ghost of Tsushima. So ultimately, I think this is an absolute win. Plus, this leaves the door open for a direct sequel to Ghost of Tsushima in the future, assuming that Ghost of Yotei does well financially, which I think it will. So even though it's not going to be a direct sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, don't let that deter your hype, because it's going to be a Ghost game and the door is still wide open for a direct sequel somewhere down the line. I could totally see a scenario where after Ghost of Yotei, the team at Sucker Punch decide to create a much smaller experience for the sequel for Ghost of Tsushima, where Jin Sakai does return, but it's more of a Miles Morales-esque project where like it's not going to be super long, takes place in the same island as Ghost of Tsushima and just the entire world, which since the world is already created, it wouldn't require as much work. But honestly, this is all copium. I would love to see it in the future, but I don't think it's going to happen. Perhaps the Ghost of Tsushima movie will give us the sequel in the expanded story that we've all wanted. But if you're currently on the fence about whether or not to pick up Ghost of Yotei because you haven't played Ghost of Tsushima, what I'll say right now is play Ghost of Tsushima. If you have the means, you definitely should play that game. It's such an incredible experience. But also, from everything that I've seen about Ghost of Yotei, it seems like they've improved on so many aspects that Tsushima built, which should make for a much more polished experience. And that's saying something because Ghost of Tsushima was extremely polished. Now, in addition to story details, Sucker Punch has also confirmed some awesome gameplay details recently about Yotei that I personally think are super cool. Now, apparently there was going to be way more weapons to choose from this time around with Ghost of Yotei, including the Orachi, which is like a giant samurai equivalent of a broadsword, a kusarigama, which is a sickle attached to a chain, and even dual katanas, so you could feel like Leonardo as you slice up enemy NPCs. Now, Sucker Punch Productions has also confirmed a bunch of visual improvements over the PlayStation 5 version of Ghost of Tsushima, which I think was very wise for them to do, because after the reveal trailer of Ghost of Yotei came out, a lot of people were making comments about how it looked identical to the previous game as opposed to looking like a proper follow-up. According to Sucker Punch, Ghost of Yotei will feature massive sightlines that will let you see much more of the map at once and in much more detail than you could with Ghost of Tsushima, which has some serious implications we'll talk about in just a minute. They also said that there was going to be additional details in the environments that weren't there before, such as more detailed skyboxes with tons of twinkling stars and a ton of little improvements to the way plants and vegetation interact with the weather and wind, making this one of the most immersive games on the PlayStation 5 to date. Now I'd like to focus briefly on one of these statements from Sucker Punch that said Ghost of Yotei will feature massive sightlines that let you look far across the environment. Well, with Ghost of Tsushima, that game offered a stunning open world with some vertical elements, climbing to Shinto shrines and scaling various cliffs in a much slower manner, but the design of Ghost of Tsushima leaned more toward the horizontal exploration rather than vertical exploration. Now, with Ghost of Yotei being set in 1603, surrounding Mount Yotei, which is now the modern day Hokkaido, the game takes place in a region that has dramatic elevation changes, including snowy mountains, towering peaks, and expansive sightlines, which this shift obviously naturally lends itself to a more vertical environment compared to the relatively flatter Tsushima Island of the first game. But their statement, massive sightlines that let you look far across the environment, tells me that we are going to be in a world where height and depth play a significant role. So traversing steep cliffs, scaling mountains, and engaging with multi-level settlements, which will offer a fresh take on the overall exploration of the world. Now, Ghost of Tsushima had limited tools for navigating those vertical spaces. There was a grappling hook that you could use for specific points in the game world, but to contrast, Ghost of Yotei might introduce different mechanics to enhance the vertical navigation, the main one being a grappling hook that will allow for much more player freedom than the first game. You know, with Ghost of Tsushima, the grappling hook worked, but you had to be in a certain spot for it to be useful. But for Ghost of Yotei, it could be used for multiple new mechanics. For instance, allowing players to use the Kaginawa in multiple different areas, virtually everywhere is what it seems like, especially if verticality is the focus. You're going to need to use it multiple times, getting up to certain areas, going down certain areas. And then another use is using the grappling hook to bring enemies closer towards you. You know, the get over here move from Scorpion in Mortal Kombat. Now, one thing that I would love to see for Ghost of Yotei is potentially a glider-like item, similar to the one in games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Rise of the Ronin, giving Atsu the ability to leap from great heights and glide across the entire landscape would be awesome. Honestly, when I was playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, I was like, dude, I could really use a glider for this game. There's so many times where I'm up on top of a mountain. I would love to be able to just jump and just glide instead of having to traverse all of the, woods in that game, which is almost impossible to traverse. So seeing something like that with Ghost of Yotei would be pretty awesome. So yeah, if the trailer and all of the early details we've had for Ghost of Yotei, it seems like they're going to be designing a world that focuses on verticality. I mean, the game is called Yotei for a reason. Mount Yotei, it would be weird to have a game where you literally don't climb mountains. So next up, there has been some leaks that have came out regarding Ghost of Yotei's release date from reputable sources. Now, Sucker Punch did confirm that they're targeting a 2025 release date, but they didn't confirm anything beyond the year. Granted, this was confirmed in a job listing, but that still counts, right? Well, earlier this year, Sucker Punch was looking for a community and support specialist to help launch Ghost of Yotei this year, so that pretty much confirms that the game is coming out within the next few months. However, we don't know exactly when in 2025 they're targeting a release, and with the giant cloud of GTA 6 hovering over the game industry, it's a little bit hard to say when Sony actually wants to pull the trigger on their next big open world action game. Several inside reports have claimed that until Rockstar and Take-Two Interactive officially confirm the release date for GTA 6, nobody else is going to even put up a release date on their projects, since they know that they will be overshadowed by GTA 6. However, according to a leaker who has leaked a few things correctly in the past, Sony and Sucker Punch are currently eyeing a July release date for Ghost of Yotei, which would get the game out long before GTA 6 has taken over the news cycle, since Rockstar isn't expected to launch their game until September at the earliest. Now, assuming that these leaks are true and Ghost of Yotei actually does launch in July, that would make a pretty stacked 2025 for PlayStation owners. Death Stranding 2 is set to release in June, and that's going to be a pretty big deal when it comes to PS5 exclusives. But then if Ghost of Yotei launches in July, that would make it the first time in a long time that Sony has dropped a major exclusive title back to back. And then just a couple of months after that, it will be the behemoth that is GTA 6 if it still releases this year. Needless to say, if you're an owner of a PS5 who likes open world games, you're about to be eating really good this year one way or another. It does, however, seem a little strange that Sony will be planning on launching this game later this year and not put a release date on it yet, and not even giving us a second trailer. But then again, that's probably what the summer state of play is going to be for. Sony is all but confirmed to be hosting hosting a big summer showcase this year like they do every summer, then it would be a pretty huge deal if they hosted the stream in May or June and then dropped a new trailer or gameplay showcase for Yotei with a July release date attached to it. Sony has a pretty massive lineup of first-party franchises, but I think it's safe to say that fans have been getting a little bit frustrated with how long it takes for new entries in these franchises to come out. So in my opinion, a great way to win fans back to Sony's side would be to drop a second trailer for Ghost of Yotei just 2 months before the game launches, which would also mean that the game was revealed and launched in a window of less than 12 months, and that's a trend that absolutely should be the standard for Sony going forward. Ghost of Yotei is one of the only major first-party games in development right now that we know about, so it will 100% be getting a new trailer at their summer state of play. But if that trailer comes with a July release date at the end of it, that will be a huge announcement, and with the game being confirmed for 2025 by Sucker Punch themselves, I actually think that there's a solid chance that this leak comes true. Well guys, that's gonna wrap it up with this video. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe with the noties on so you're not missing out on any future gaming news, and until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.